Before we get started, I just want to warn y'all that this video will contain some discussions on sensitive topics such as sexual harassment and suicidal ideation. If you are sensitive to those topics or things relating to those topics, I recommend that you maybe sit this one out. Hey y'all, I've been just thinking about a lot of stuff and I just want to talk about it. I know a lot of people have been wanting me to talk about what has been going on in my life, to explain some things, so I'm going to get into it. So, please just be patient with me. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little anxious to do this video. Not really because I'm worried about anyone being mad at me, but more so, I'm just not used to really being vulnerable like this. As I will explain in the video, I've been, coming out of, a depressive fog that has been affecting me the past couple years, and, only these past couple weeks do I have some sense of clarity, truly. And, it's a lot to take on. Even getting all that good again is still a lot to take on, but I will explain. So, life the past few years has been really difficult to say the least. I think we can all agree on that. I don't want to spend all day giving y'all a sob story, so I'm just going to summarize some of the bigger things that happened to me since 2019. So, throughout 2019, I was finishing up my last year of high school, and I was beginning to experiment with YouTube. I had a now deleted gaming channel, which has been replaced with the High Rounds channel now. But the real reason I chose 2019 is because this is the point my life started to derail a bit. By the end of that year, I was going through multiple tumultuous friendships with some less than savory people, but they still mattered to me and at the end of the day weren't bad people. We just didn't see eye to eye on a couple things. But by December 2019, I had lost 3 of those friends, and those were some of the best friends I had made during my entire high school years. These losses led me to begin seeking companionship elsewhere, aka the internet. Regrettably, I joined a furry server in February of 2020. Yes, technically I identify as a furry despite having serious issues with the excessively sexual nature of the fandom. I just really enjoy the art, honestly, and I've even begun trying to learn how to do the art. But those issues began with a server, as someone who was 20 at the time decided they were going to groom me and attempt to solicit me into sex. I was 17 at the time, closing in on 18 years old, but regardless, that was still incredibly fucked up. Even if at the time I, for some reason, appreciated the attention. In this same server, I actually managed to meet my partner, Illicit, and we have been dating for a year and a half now. Illicit is one of the only positive things I derived from that server, as the sexual harassment did not end with that first example. It would actually continue through a decent chunk of 2022, though at the hands of others. These experiences warped my negative perceptions on myself and the world in general further. Then, of course, March 2020 rolled around, and I was forced to quit my only job I've ever had. Well, at the time. My parents both worked in healthcare, and I worked at a grocery store. They didn't want to risk me bringing home COVID because that could have seriously compromised where they work, which is fair. I don't blame them for their decision, but I don't think there's any denying that it had a negative impact on me. I mean, I was 18 years old, and I had just lost my only source of income now. I would spend most of 2020 the way many of y'all did, inside, at my computer, just constantly being online, and this would come back to thoroughly bite me in the ass later. Around September of 2020, I told my parents I needed to go to therapy. I had struggled with mental health problems well before that point, like anxiety and PTSD, but depression was starting to settle in, like clinical depression. Every day felt miserable. I wasn't enjoying my life. I was always stressed out. I ended up getting 2 appointments through my mom's work, but they unfortunately didn't help me too much. When insurance didn't cover the bills, the practice began harassing me and my family for months, over around $120 in therapy bills. Then, in December of 2020, I got COVID, and that destroyed me. I genuinely thought I was going to die at some point, as it started restricting my breathing very heavily. I dealt with shortness of breath and chronic fatigue for 8 months after my first round with COVID. In February of 2021, I began taking a new antidepressant medication, fluoxetine. I would continue taking this medication until June of 2023. Following that, in June of 2021, I began attending therapy consistently. I began working at a nursing facility in September of 2021 as a laundry aide. I was fired from this position 4 months later due to my supposed lack of skill with doing laundry. I don't really know. They brought me in for training one day, they said I did a good job, and then turned around and fired me a few days later. I then moved over to the dietary department, where I still work today. I had to switch to morning shifts, meaning I had to uproot the night owl life I had been living and switch it all back around. No more being a night owl, I was an early bird now. In January of 2022, I lost my first therapist. She didn't really like the work conditions at the office, so she left. I temporarily stopped going to therapy at that point. In February of 2022, me and Illicit officially began dating, which was one of the best moments of my life by far. In May of 2022, my channel got demonetized, which led to me beefing with YouTube for the better part of a year. They would instate my membership again in May of 2023. In June of 2022, my partner moved down to Florida from Kentucky to come stay with me and my family. I would not trade this for the world, but it did come with a downside when it came to content creation. We share the same PC, and he would often want to use it, and that's not a problem. He can have it whenever he wants. But the problem was, by this time the move had occurred, that depression had sunk in so much, I was getting mentally burnt out on making content. So the whole PC situation made it a lot easier to just flake on my responsibilities regarding my channel and my server. In July of 2022, I noticed the aforementioned burnout and began therapy again. I also started a second antidepressant medication by the name of Wellbutrin. Health-wise, this was one of my lowest points. I weighed 240 pounds, slept all day, I felt miserable, and had no motivation to do the things I loved yet again. I had to actively force myself to make videos or spend time with my friends, and I hate to say that, but that's genuinely how it felt to me. Wellbutrin helped me shed a ton of that weight and have more motivation, but I noticed it would also wind up my temper quicker. I never had a consistently hot temper before starting Wellbutrin. In September of 2022, my grandfather on my mom's side passed away. This was an extremely difficult moment mentally, and it would be followed up in January 2023. That month, my grandfather on my dad's side passed away. Also, in January of 2023, both me and Illicit contracted COVID-19. This bout was nowhere near as severe as the first one, but it still knocked me down for most of the month. And in April of 2023, my car broke down, forcing us to live paycheck to paycheck from the fees. And we lived this way from April to August of 2023, so like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. In June of 2023, my partner had a medical emergency, which I was going to specify, but I think that might actually be a HIPAA violation, so I'm not going to. Thankfully, nothing more ever came of this. At the same time in June, I had learned that Florida Medicaid withdrew my health insurance. They claimed I was making too much money, despite not even making $20K a year, and living paycheck to paycheck at the time. Due to the lack of insurance, I once again had no therapy, but this time I also lost my medication. I had no choice but to withdraw from antidepressants on my own. The withdrawal period was easily one of the darkest periods in my life mentally, as I began to develop suicidal ideation. I'll tell you now, in my heart and my soul, I've always and I still do want to live. But withdrawing from antidepressants unexpectedly often causes these symptoms of suicidal behavior. It's the reason they have a black label on the box. I would just start getting thoughts throughout the day about how I could end my life, or that maybe I should. Thankfully, I never tried, and I don't ever even plan on it. That's just, no. So, most recently, in August of 2023, my partner got some dental work done, and that added another $2,000 onto our medical bills. We're also just now getting insurance again. This way, we will be able to address our health problems, physically and mentally. Which leads us to now. I'm still not perfect, and I have a lot of issues, as you'll see, but I do feel like as if that severe level of, clinical depression has faded. Most of the time I get upset anymore, it's more so related to just triggers. The biggest story of my life these past few years has been my mental health. Me being mentally ill is no secret. I talked about it all the time in my server, and themes of mental illness show up quite often in my videos. However, I don't think people understood how deep the rabbit hole truly goes. Ever since starting therapy in 2020, I've been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, OCD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and the funnest one of them all, borderline personality disorder. To put it simply, BPD is often manifested through excessive anger or fear, often when related to personal triggers, but not always, or just generally stressful situations. And this is where that complex post-traumatic stress disorder thing comes in, because it often coincides with that, borderline personality disorder, the two go hand in hand, which is why people with complex post-traumatic stress disorder often become very volatile in social situations sometimes if they've had those negative experiences in their life, which I have. Now, when I say this, I'm not using this as an excuse for, me to fucking fly off the handle at people. I don't do that, under normal circumstances. I think the only times I've flipped on people is, under extremely stressful situations, and I try and do everything possible to avoid that. But at the end of the day, that's what makes BPD, that's the disorder I struggle with most until this day. It's difficult. And people really don't talk about clinical depression enough. It's debilitating. It's almost like having a brain injury. The best thing I can compare it to physically is paralysis, because honestly, that's what it feels like. You're stuck in the same place mentally, and it's so difficult to move forward and improve and get out of that just disgusting haze of negativity. Everything feels like it takes such colossal effort, and similarly to how paralyzed people often need to relearn physical activities, depression makes you relearn mentally and emotionally. Even the simplest things like being motivated and enjoying your life, there's an actual learning curve behind that, and it's so insane to me, and I know that probably sounds insane to others, but that's how it is. I felt the need to explain all of this as it will help contextualize the rest of the video. But I also hope this helps serve as an explanation for why my schedule and my mood has been so erratic over these past couple of years. Alright, now let's get to the part of the title y'all were all waiting for. I'm going to talk about Nova's video on the community, which I will refer to as Novaric him throughout this video. If you've watched that video, you probably know about the rocky past between me and Nova, though I take full responsibility for that, which I will elaborate on in a second. If you haven't watched the video, I recommend you at the very least skim it when you have the time. It's an important video that talks about many figures in the EAS community, including myself. I don't plan on spending too much time covering the video specifically because I bring it up mainly for just one reason. Nova, if you're watching this, I would like to formally apologize to you for my behavior. I often acted unfairly to you, and frequently did not follow up on promises or obligations I made to you and others regarding the EAS community and just personal obligations I had to you. I did not take the time to consider what you were going through or how your personal life shaped your perspective, which was hypocritical of me, because I was asking you to do the same for me, but then I wasn't doing it for you, and I realized that that was fucked up, and I'm sorry. I maintain that I never intended to be manipulative towards you or anyone, or I never acted out of malice. However, I fully take accountability for the times I've fallen short or I lashed out at you or others. While I know in my heart that it was never my intent to act like that, the negative behavior still happened regardless. It still impacted the people around me, especially you. And no matter what was going on, or what is going on in my life, I just need to be a better man. Whether you choose to forgive me or not, I still hurt you, and for that I am deeply sorry. So that video came out at the end of May or early June, so I'm sure there's questions on why I didn't respond sooner. While it does not excuse the time it took to respond, my reasonings lay earlier in this video. At the time Novaric him dropped, my life was absolute hell. It did not help that some people who watched the video began to degrade and belittle me, both behind my back and in front of me, claiming I was making all of this stuff up to avoid responding. I don't blame Nova for the behaviors of these people, by the way, but that's a big part of why I didn't respond sooner. A lot of people had already made their minds up on me from the video, so I didn't really see a point in rushing it. Also, I didn't want to rush into making an apology due to my mental state. I didn't want to half-ass this apology to you, or I didn't want to do it under peer pressure from others. I wanted you to know that I am genuinely sorry, and that I took a lot of what you said to heart. Your criticism definitely assisted me in being able to reshape myself into a better man, and for that, I thank you. I'm not looking for forgiveness. You have every right to be mad at me still. I just wanted to try and make things right, even if it took me a while. Alright, so next up, I just briefly want to talk about the Fall Brawl event. This was a recently announced community festival in a similar vein to my Spring Fling event that happened back at the end of May. According to the announcement video, it's being hosted by Jenny Mac, a longtime friend of mine in the community, along with EAS creators Harvester and Supernova. For more details, go check out the announcement video. I'll link it down in the description below, but I'll let Nova explain what it's about here.
Wait, hold on, Nova, slow your road there. This event sounds really familiar. I remember something like this happening before. I think it was called Spring Fling. Wasn't it by EAS? Which, yes, it was. So how is this any different, Nova? It's not. No, I'm just playing. It's different in that, well, ours is actually going to be competent, coordinated, good. Meanwhile, Ace's was kind of... It's gonna seem like... It seems like I'm dissing Ace because, like, you know, the beef, but, like, genuinely, like... I respect what he wanted to do for Spring Fling, but his shit was, like, so uncoordinated. All it literally had was a specific date where his scenarios and the people involved would fucking premiere their scenarios. There was no coordination, no set join dates, no set end dates. So we're changing that.
I don't take offense to this clip, though I do disagree still, to some degree. I will admit that the event was not incredibly well coordinated or especially marketed, and again, that ties back into the shit I was talking about earlier with me making content and burnout and blah blah blah. But I still think the event turned out pretty good overall, and it served its intended purpose, to help boost up creators and to encourage further investment into the EAS community. To me, it was a success. And now there's a second iteration that will improve on the formula, and that's awesome. Don't quote me on this, but I heard from a friend they already have 50 plus creators wanting to participate, which is just amazing. That's like 2.5 times more than Spring Fling had in the end. If it all comes together as intended, it could be a huge push for the community, and that's what I like to see. Speaking of which, I want to talk about the EAS community as a whole for a bit. Obviously, everyone has their different perspectives, but I would like to provide mine. Something I heard quite often when I was still running my server, which I will get into in a bit, was that the community is inherently toxic. In my opinion, that is not necessarily true, but there is an argument to be made. There have definitely been some truly nasty individuals here, like Clay Ranger or RMWX, but those people are not indicative of the community at large. The quote-unquote toxicity often arises from disagreements, people not seeing eye to eye, whether it be on some mundane topic or actual serious issues. These things often bubble over into situations way bigger than they should have been, and again, I've been guilty of doing that before. What I've learned helps, personally, is really simple. Sometimes you just gotta take a step back and breathe. Also, I have tried to become much more mindful of what the other person may be experiencing in the background, or any potential influences that have happened in their life that may change their perspective. Another thing I need to do sometimes is understand it is okay to just enjoy the content. I get comments from people saying things like, I enjoy EAS content, but after seeing this video, like the video I made on Clay for example, I don't like it anymore. In my opinion, that's kind of narrow-minded. You shouldn't bail on your interests just because I, or Nova, or Harv, or whoever else have our opinions about the community. At the end of the day, you need to make that decision for yourself, and you can't just follow along just because one of us say so. Also, there's literally no obligation to talk to people at all. It's completely acceptable to just be a viewer. I don't think anyone should be forced to interact with the community or its members if they don't want to. Just watch your scenario and just go on with your day, you know? Now, with me saying that, I'm not personally very active in the EAS community anymore outside of my YouTube channel. A part of it was people pestering me after the drop of Novaric him to respond immediately while my life was in the process of falling apart. Another part of it actually came from me running an EAS server and slowly realizing that I am just not built for socialization on a large scale, at least not anymore. I don't know if it was something depression wiped out, but I barely enjoy being in large groups of people anymore. Most of the time now, I'm just talking to 1 or 2 people at a time, if any at all. I've also picked up a bad habit of not responding to messages, which I think developed during the time I was just trying to stay off social media entirely. I just didn't want to talk to people, and it still kind of lingers. Even to this day, Discord and technically YouTube is all I have now in terms of social media. I will still DM and chat with people, and I don't have any specific problem with the EAS community or any particular individuals currently in it. I'm sure a few people expected me to be frustrated with Supernova. In the beginning, admittedly, I kinda was, but that was misguided. I did not get to watching Novaric him for a few weeks after it released. It's not an excuse, but my reasoning at the time was, it was a 2.5-hour video talking about a lot of heavy things in a time where I was already in a mental crisis and my partner was having a health crisis. Some of those negative things being about me, which is completely justified because again, I agree with a lot of Nova's criticism and what he said about me. But when you're in such a terrible mental state, already beating down on yourself so much in your own mind, you don't need even more pressure on it, you know? I also want to say that Novaric him was not just about me, it was a video about the community in general. I feel that is a very important distinction to make because I don't want to make it out to be like this was some hit piece on me or that I feel targeted, no. Everyone, including some of Nova's closest friends even, got criticism, and at the end of the day, I just think he was speaking from his heart. I've said it before and I'll say it again because I want this to be painted in black and white. I think Supernova is a very intelligent and good individual. I don't want to say kid anymore because he's much more than that. I think he's a great person. My frustration related to that video had nothing to do with the contents of the video itself. It came with how a few select community members responded, which I will not divulge into, of course. But from my personal perspective, a lot of people, both fellow creators and viewers, put me up on a pedestal with this channel. They really valued what I do and what I did, and I appreciate that immensely. But then a select few people, not many, but a few, laughed at me when I fell off that podium, and many people who I thought cared about me didn't even come to check on me when I was going through a crisis. And those people that were negative when they realized that I'm not a perfect individual, that I've made mistakes, that I've made bad decisions, these people who said they looked up to me and respected me, they didn't take the time to try and understand my end. They saw someone, again, fairly, criticizing me, and decided to use it as an excuse to talk shit behind my back and to drag my name through the mud. People began making assumptions about me left and right, calling me names and accusing me of being abusive, claiming I was making up medical emergencies just so I could avoid responding to Nova's video. And I don't think some of y'all realize that allegations like that hold so much weight on the internet. You can just say something and most people will take it as gospel. That is something I've had to learn through YouTube, and 2 of my biggest teachers in that were actually Nova and my partner as well. I will just be flat out honest with y'all. I do not view myself as having power or influence over people because I make EAS scenarios. Honestly, I find that idea to be kind of ridiculous in a way. That somebody would take my word as gospel because I make content they find enjoyable. But that's the sad reality of the internet, and I didn't realize that for the longest time. To be frank, I still don't really know what to do about it or how to embrace it because I don't like feeling that I have power over people. I want to be equals. I want to be on the same level as you. That was the whole premise of things like Behind the Screens, for example. That's why I tried to boost smaller creators often. Creators like Snowboy, Piggy Pigplot, FT, Sarah EAS, Just Dante, the EAS Place, YX, Maxstar, and even more people. I always just wanted to support those around me. And I came to learn through doing that I do have influence and power, which is terrifying to me because I don't want to influence people. I didn't sign up to make EAS scenarios because I thought I would have any semblance of control of my surroundings or those around me, and this is where I want to hit home something that we don't always consider: fame in the internet. Now, I'm not trying to claim I'm internet famous, but in the scale of the EAS community, I'm up there. I'm near the top 10, if not already in there in terms of subscriber count. And having eyes on you like that at all the time is just very stressful, especially in a community full of younger individuals. The older generation has and does often butt heads with the younger people here because we could just never see eye to eye. The truth is that with the way that the world has shifted, we kind of are coming from two different places right now. Many of my adult friends have been pulling away from social media because the internet is just unhealthy for us. We're not as invested in Discord and YouTube, and that's why I think we don't take some of these things as seriously as the younger generation does when there are, like, arguments or disagreements. If it works out for y'all, though, that's great. But I won't lie, I do worry about the younger generation being on social media from such a young age. I avoided it all the way up until I was like 15, thank God, but there's people that got into it younger and it ended up way worse. And I can attest that even still, it does screw around with your brain. Thank y'all for listening. I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. I also would like to apologize to all of the viewers of my channel for the rocky ride this channel has been, mostly through my scheduling and my quality. And, at the end of the day, I just need to really put my mind to it and focus down even harder because I know that I have the potential to be so much more than I am. But I also do not want to push it too hard because, like I said, this is the first couple weeks that I feel like I am just out of this depressive fog. I feel like I have clarity again. And that's part of why I made this video, is because I felt like I could address not just Nova, but everyone honestly now. Like, that I actually had a clearer mind. I didn't want to come here and bullshit y'all. So that's why I'm here now. I'm sorry that it took a while and that didn't make some people happy, but you know what? At the end of the day, call it selfish, but when it got to that point, I was just like, I need to do what I have to do for myself to survive in that crisis I was having, and I'll come back and I will deal with the repercussions later. And I am okay to deal with the repercussions. I'm okay if people are still fucking mad at me and they don't want to talk to me because I took too long to make a video on the internet. That's fine. Don't talk to me. But at the end of the day, like I said, I'm sorry to anyone that was negatively affected by my behavior in the past couple years. I've not always been the most pleasant person. I have lashed out. I've just been depressive and genuinely not fun to be around sometimes. And I am truly sorry for that. But I want you to know that I am on the right path. In my heart, I believe I'm on the right path and I'm getting better. So I just hope I can prove it to y'all. Thank you. Please stay safe out there. Be kind to one another. And take care.